Welcome to Boards, Beer, and BS, the Snomie.com podcast where snowboard pros, coaches, and local riders hang out, have a drink, and talk snowboarding. My name is Jedidiah Tan, snowboard coach and founder of Snomie.com. If you like hanging out with other snowboarders and talking about snowboarding, this is the podcast for you. So sit back and enjoy the podcast. Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. So I am Jed, and with me today is JP Fok. He's a fitness instructor here in Whistler. And yeah, so how's it going, JP?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm basking in the sunlight, looking across the Whistler Valley to Rainbow and all the other mountains around.
So you guys don't know, but JP's actually in the same house as me, but we're on different balconies because yeah, if we're in the same area, it kind of picks up both our mics, and then it gets really, really weird. So yeah, we're same house, just different rooms for this podcast. But yeah, so anyway, that's off topic. But JP, didn't you win something called the Stoked contest or something? I saw that in a paper, but I don't really know what it is.
So I'm this year's Whistler's most stoked man, which means
wait, is this why you were constantly putting Instagram photos saying like most stoked hashtag or whatever it was?
Yeah, so the contest was you entered and they put you in as like hashtag most stoked, and they sort of said, why are you the most stoked? So you have to say why. And then every day I just kept saying why I was the most stoked, and I was doing things from work, just teaching, taking people out road riding, or if I was coaching snowboarding on the weekend, I just kept posting photos from stuff like that, or kind of regrammed a couple ones from last season and throughout the year, this year on sunny days.
Yeah.
But I guess they got the word that I was the most stoked guy in Whistler.
Because like I remember looking at those Instagrams and thinking like, why does he keep using that tag most stoked? Is he just really, really stoked or something? Why?
Man, I wake up every morning and I can't stop yelling, "Fucking yes! Fucking yes!"
Yeah, but what did you win anyway? Because it was in like the paper, so I assume you won something for being most stoked in Whistler.
Yeah, I won the municipality gave me a free 6-month pass to Meadow Park, the
fitness center,
the recreation center. Yeah, which is good because I'm training for a triathlon and I need a pool to swim in before while the lakes thaw.
Yeah,
and then the Whistler Ski and Snowboard Festival gave me two free tickets to every show this week. So I've gone to all the festival shows, Intersection, 72 Hour. I went to the Pro Photographer last night. This thing called Mountain Multiplicity on Sunday, which was really good.
Yeah. And
I kind of ditched my silent disco tickets. I gave them to some friends. Have you ever been to a silent disco?
Wait, is that those things where like you sit around and then you got the headphones, so no one can hear each other, but they can hear the music in the headphones or whatever it is?
So yeah, a silent disco is like there's a couple DJs playing that night, and everyone's got different headphones, but there's channels in the headphones, so you tune into whatever DJ you like. But then you actually walk into the room, if you don't have headphones on, it's dead quiet except for people kind of like humming incoherently to different tunes on their headphones.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really into it, so I gave it off to some friends.
Yeah. By the way, your goggle tan is very noticeable.
It's actually this is the weakest video, the weakest goggle tan that I've ever had, and out of any snowboard season.
Okay, so yeah, that was off topic, but let's get into some snowboard topics. So
yeah,
first topic.
Oh, I forgot to say, the other thing I won was a trophy. I should have brought the trophy for today. It's like 2 feet high, and it fits exactly 1.5 jugs of beer.
So this was tested, I assume.
Yeah. A few times.
Wait, so what does it say on the plaque then?
It just says hashtag the most stoked. Hashtag.
Oh man. Yeah, I was wondering, man, for like 2 weeks I was just looking at that. Why does he keep posting the most stoked in every photo? But now it makes sense. Okay, so snowboard topics. What got you into snowboarding?
I started snowboarding when I was about 9, but I can still remember even younger than that, begging my parents for a snowboard when we started, because I used to ski. My parents got me into skiing at like 2 years old. And I think back then, this is like 90, this is the mid 90s, so, you know, snowboarding was really, really coming up around that time. And, you know, you had kids like Shaun White just starting to show up to X Games and win gold medals. And you had, the guys I was watching around then was like Travis Rice was just starting to appear on the scene just a bit after I started snowboarding, actually. It's hard to even remember for that far back. I was so young, but I guess skiing got me into snowboarding and just seeing people snowboard on the mountain and just saying, well, that looks way cooler than what we're doing.
Yeah. Wait, how old were you?
I started when I was 9, but I remember being like 5 or 7 or something like that, just begging for a snowboard to my parents.
And that means you got started way ahead of me. Because, I mean, I only started when I was like 18.
Well, I heard a statistic too that like Australians and the Canadians start really young. And Americans start even younger when they start snowboarding.
Yeah, because you guys have snow access like from a really young age.
Yeah, it's easily accessible when you're.
Yeah. Whereas if I guess the people listening to this podcast, most of the longer listeners know my story. But I was in. Oh man, I gotta stop saying like. So for people that listen to the last podcast, every second word I said was like. It's not that bad. I'm exaggerating, but man, when you're editing that thing, you really start picking up on all your speech patterns and things like that. So yeah, I gotta stop saying like. But anyway, that's off topic. When I started, as I was saying, people know the story already, but I started when I was 18. Like I literally just went snowboarding, like with my friends, and I think it was my uni housemate at the time. He just suggested that we go snowboarding, and I just had the most fun ever. And at the end of the day, I just thought, man, why can't you just do this every day? Like, why do you have to go do other stuff? So I think from that point on, like I made a crazy leap to just go snowboard every day, and like I moved halfway across the world to just go do that. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too much into the story because everyone who's listening to this podcast usually knows that story already. But
well, and everybody has a story. Like I know people at snowboarding save their lives from, crimes and drugs and things like that. Like everybody's got a great story for snowboarding. I think it's an excellent outlet of self-expression and creativity, and that's what keeps people hooked on it.
Well, I mean, it's such a confidence builder as well for like kids who are growing up and really young, just to be able to like set your mind on something, conquer it, get better at it, see the improvement in themselves. I think that it's the same with sports in general, really. Most sports, it's just such a good confidence builder if you can get people to commit to it. Yeah. But okay, well, since you're a fitness instructor, I thought we'd ask this question. What, in your opinion, say if there was someone that they're into snowboarding but they're not really into fitness that much and exercise, what is the most basic minimum training they can do if they want just like an okay workout to stay fit for snowboarding?
More training.
What training though? Like, okay, give me some examples of like exercise or whatever.
I would say like learning how to get to a functional squat. So being able to get your butt down between your ankles, below your knees. That would be like step 1. Basics, just being able to actually go through that movement without falling over or having to lift your heels off the ground or having like a really ugly contorted spine. Like just being able to do that as a functional movement would be the bare minimum I think a person would have to do for snowboarding. Yeah.
What about stretching? Like, does that
stretching? Well, that gets complicated because to be able to do a squat, like sometimes you get people, it could be that their hamstrings are too tight or that maybe they're just got a really weak core. They're not good at stabilizing their spine as they go down through that squat. So it's such an individualistic, such a broad question for something that usually is so individualistic of a response. Like some
Okay.
people can be maybe they're as bendy like Gumby, but they're weak like they're just made of sand. I don't know. I don't know. something that's just bent. Like they're just like
Sand.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're liquid and they don't have any stability. That's what we call that.
So the squat then would be the one thing.
Yeah, I think just as a functional movement, if the bare minimum they could do would be to learn to squat, do a squat well, and then apply that to snowboarding, because that's really snowboarding applies leaning, lateral movement, and then up and down movement where you're squatting, a little bit of torsional stuff. But for the most part, the hardest part is when you're putting pressure on that edge and you're moving up and down on that edge in a pretty much a squat pattern.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. So squats, we got that. I mean, like, I guess, what should I answer? I mean, I don't know anything about as advanced as JP, but for all the exercises that physios always give me, it's always balance type things. They just take like a squat or whatever it is, and they'll add some sort of balance movement to it. That's what a lot of my physios and gym trainers always got me doing. So like they'll add like a Bosu ball, those like half balls, and instead of doing a normal squat, they'll get me to put one leg on it and like kind of do a balanced squat.
Oh, totally. And what they're trying to do is, I mean, snowboarding is very asymmetrical, which means, you use your back leg more than your front leg, or you're using them in very different ways. And usually your hips end up kind of in a slightly twisted position. So they're trying to create symmetry between your legs. And they put you on the Bosu ball because they want to create stability in that asymmetrical pattern that they're trying to drill. So, they're trying to train one leg to be stable and strong and mobile in that movement pattern on one leg, and then the other in a balanced way. So, Okay. New topic. I think we're gonna burn people out on the fitness stuff. I could totally burn people out because I could talk all day about it. Just
what they need to do is just not only snowboard is the answer. You gotta train like, and especially because your typical customer must be like a weekend warrior, right? So they're probably working 9 to 5 Monday, Friday, or something like that. Weekends they go up to the hill, and they might not have even moved their body through that squat for an extended 5 full days before they've actually moved through that movement pattern. Then they go to do it on a snowboard where it's an unstable surface. They're trying to balance on one edge, and they haven't moved that way. So they're asking a lot of their body when they haven't even done the basics on flat ground.
Yeah. So I mean, well, let's not talk too much about fitness. We'll burn people out in the fitness stuff. But yeah, so okay, new topic. Okay, this is a topic we actually did in the last podcast, but people won't have listened to the last podcast because you guys back home don't know, but JP has a habit of tapping on tables. So we recorded a whole podcast episode, but it had tapping through the entire podcast, so we're not gonna show that podcast. I figured we'd just re-record a new one. So yeah, this question was asked before, but thankfully it was like, it must have been a month ago when we recorded the last one. So we both forgot all the topics, so hopefully we'll have a good discussion about them. But okay, the question is the insane progression of snowboarding. How long until you throw a double cork, JP? Because I know you're doing. You asked you about some trampoline stuff. You said you're doing a lot of trampoline training right now as well.
Yeah. I go to trampoline class like twice a week.
Yeah. So how long until you throw a double? Because I know you tried a few. What are your?
How long till I throw a double?
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Because
I might not even ever throw a double. I don't know.
I got no reason to throw a double. I'm not really trying to make it as an athlete anymore. If the question was sort of like when you should, I guess the logical thing would be you should do a double when you can do
both
aspects,
corks.
both singles that are involved in the double, right? So like say you wanted to do double underflip, then you probably should be able to break down starting from the first, front side cork. It's the first front side cork 5,
Yeah.
And then, because that turns into a switch backside cork
Oh yeah.
after you come around, right?
Yeah, I already know people back home are going to be sitting going, what are they talking about? But I mean, I'll try to explain. Basically, for people new to corking, basically, a cork is just basically when you flip it almost inverted. You flip off axis, basically, or you spin off axis, rather. So you're just spinning the same thing, but you're spinning off axis. And usually, with double corks, it's usually people start off at 1080, because that's just the most comfortable double cork to throw in most situations. And what JP's saying is with a 1080 double cork, say you're doing it backside or whatever it is, you basically be thinking of it as doing one 540 cork straight into another 540 cork. So what he's saying is that ideally you want to learn both corks. So you want to learn that first cork and then the cork that it turns into as well. So okay, what's the cork that I normally do? A backside cork, double cork, it would be a backside cork into, what is it, switch? Is it switch front side? Backside 1080. Yeah, it's I think it's a backside 540 into a cab cork. Switch front side 540 cork. Yeah. So what he's saying is you combine the two, obviously. So I mean, with all snowboarding, this is something I talk about a lot with like my private students. Is any big trick is just a combination of smaller tricks, really. So with double corks, ideally, well, I think Jeff, when I was doing a talk with him, said it the best. If you're ready to throw a double cork, you know how to throw a double cork.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, otherwise you shouldn't even be attempting it. It's one of those things where once you're at the level to throw a double cork, you know all the things that you need to know to throw a double cork. So,
yeah, I mean, I almost imagine you should almost be able to at least throw a 900 and be thinking about doing 10s as well at the same time. Like, because it's a different...
Yeah, it's totally different. Like a lot of people don't realize, like a normal 1080 and a double cork 1080 is such a different trick, completely different from an aspect of how you execute it and like how you rotate and look during the trick.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's actually, I don't know. They say that the regular 10 on axis is supposed to be technically more difficult than double cork.
I honestly go with that because I've done like usually I only throw like a couple 2-3 10s a season. Tops and you know I have to be really feeling it because you know you need a big jump and then you need to be on your game that day to throw a 10.
Yeah,
and like it's almost like I've barely worked on doubles. Like I've done a few attempts at it and sometimes gotten closer, sometimes not really. But it's almost like it's so much easier to think about the double cork than it is to get that 1080 down. Well, normal 1080 that is. So like yeah, I'd agree there. Like the double cork 1080 is way easier than just a normal 1080 in my opinion anyway. But I don't know, that's just me though. But I think it's a lot more balls as well. I noticed that with the double cork 1080 it's just that second cork. You come out of that first cork and then you start thinking about the second cork, but it feels so unnatural to want to dip in again after you come out of that first cork.
Yeah,
I think that's the scary part to me anyway.
Yeah, well, and then you also have to be comfortable with the size of jump and you're going to be hitting. And I mean,
that's the thing with like big jumps. It's almost like once you're used to them, and once you're spinning off them as well, like half the time you don't even really notice how big they are because half the time you're just spinning. You don't even know what's going on. All you see is sky ground, or whatever it is during the spin. It's mostly mental. I mean that comes down to most snowboarding.
Yeah,
it's a big mental thing.
Oh, and picking your spot points, man. Doing trampoline classes really helped me develop that awareness. Sort of, the coach is always very adamant about like when you learn a new trick, she'll ask me like, "Did you see the cross on the trampoline? And did you finish by looking at the end where you're supposed to be facing?"
Yeah.
And having those spotting cues, like trying to take that and applying it to snow, which is really difficult because on a trampoline you have a clear red cross. Like you're looking at that and you're looking at the dot at the end of the trampoline. In the snow, it's like, what are you looking at? You're looking at horizon and takeoff, landing. I don't know. Like, there's no clear point where you really should be looking. So it's that's where applying those two skills. I think that's the hardest part about transferring tramp to.
Yeah. I got to get you to come with me to bounce one day and record a trampoline session kind of thing. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's not talk too much about double corks. I think a lot of people... That's the thing about snowboarding is so many people don't realize... I think within like our man, I gotta stop saying like. Okay, within our social circle.
I think it's my fault. I think I say like a lot too, don't I?
I don't know. Well, when I was editing the last podcast, I said like way too much, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Likes can be contagious, I think.
Yeah. Well, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Okay, I've totally forgotten what I was saying. What were we saying, JP?
We were talking about double corks. Double corks get played out.
Yeah. But yeah, with like a lot of the people that listening to snowboarding or are snowboarders, I think a lot of us in Whistler, and because we're such avid snowboarders, and we're the type of people that, you know, it's not uncommon for us to ride 5 days a week, sometimes even. And we forget that a lot of the huge majority of snowboarders out there aren't people like us. It's mostly people that go maybe 2 days a year, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the big majority of snowboarders. And I find a lot of them, they look at guys like us who might be doing big tricks and like doing all that, but they forget about the time investment versus like deer time versus how much time we spend on snow. There's such a big gap. And so it's one of those things where you really can't compare yourself to the other snowboarder, because like if someone's comparing themselves to like me or you, we've got hundreds and hundreds of days under our belt, whereas, you know, the average weekend warrior might take them an entire lifetime just to get 100 days in snow.
Yeah. It could take a long time,
Yeah, so anyway, new topic. Okay, how much does gear affect snowboarding? So
we talked about this last time, didn't we?
Yeah, we talked. I can't remember what we said, but that's good, so it'll be fresh.
I think I think we both said unanimously that gear has a huge impact on snowboarding, and there's so many different aspects of the environment of snowboarding that it affects, right?
Well, I think that's right. Now I remember what we said. So like, yeah, I mean, my take on it is that it really is very situational. Like for people that know how to use the gear, it has such a huge impact on your riding. But for, let's say, like we were just talking about weekend warriors, they just want, you know, they got the all mountain setup. Once they've got like a solid setup, they'll do most things. They don't really see the gains as much, just because once you have a solid setup, the difference between a solid setup and a setup that's 5 or 10% better, the weekend warrior can't use that difference, you know.
No.
So for those guys, I don't think they see that difference in their gear. But for people that can use the difference, that's where it starts getting into play.
Oh, and I think it's better for people at that lower level when they're first starting out to use the softer, that might even be cheaper, sometimes not even cheaper, but the softer gear that's out there, just to get started. Because, like, say you put a beginner on a Kessler, they're going to catch their edge, like, every time they go to turn. It doesn't slide. That board's meant to carve rail, like, heavy carved lines from gate to gate or through border cross tracks.
Wait, you're going to have to explain to them what a Kessler is, because those guys won't.
Oh, yeah, because a Kessler is, like, these Austrian-made, like, super stiff. They got metal in the core, and it's got very little torsional flex. It's just made to rail, have like super fast carved lines for racing. It's a race board.
Yeah.
And if you put a beginner on that, probably are not likely going to have a good time when they're first learning, because those razor sharp edges are just going to catch and send them flying, and you have to be going fast to balance on the edge of those things. So yeah.
So I mean, like, that's my take on gear. Anyway, it's that. It's a good idea. I mean, for most people, I think most people, they're pretty good just getting a solid all mountain setup, something that'll do a little bit of everything. And at that point, most of them won't need any more gear, because at that point, you know, you're not going to see the returns on investing in specialized powder gear or specialized jibbing gear, because the skill level just will never get to the point where they need that 5% or 10% extra that they may use.
No.
You know, and I think a lot of people get hung up on that. I get so many questions from people. They'll be like, I've got a 155 size jib board. Should I size down to a 153? Is that going to be the difference in me being able to press my board or being able to do this trick? And it's like, no, it is not. I'm like, it's good to get the ideal setup for you, but most, like, I say 99% of the times it's the rider when it comes to learning tricks. Like, a lot of those tricks, as long as you're not doing something stupid like using a really floppy board off a 80-foot jump or something ridiculous like that, the gear just doesn't come into play for those guys as much, you know. At some point you're just blaming the gear and not your own riding.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that like you said before, we have hundreds of days of practice, so that means hundreds of days of playing around and experimenting. And we might have had a bad day on a piece of crap equipment, but we had to figure it out. We had the time to figure it out the hard way.
Yeah.
So like you said, the weekend warrior, probably to save them time and money, because they're not going to be going out buying a new board every weekend to test out, like, and then having it. They don't want to they don't have a shit trip or a shit weekend.
Yeah.
They're going to want to just make sure they got the stuff they need. So they just need the the general boards that are out there. And I think that used to be the industry was totally fueled by that. Was like Burton started making softer boards, and all these companies started making softer boards for the weekend warrior that were just very forgiving, good for just all mountain, like you said. So an all mountain board, you're safe to go with that.
Yeah.
You don't need the top end stuff that the guys are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like a lot of people, they think the more expensive board is the better board as well. But I mean, so much of the time, it's not. It's like more expensive might just mean it's got some sort of new tech that they're pushing this year or something like that. But a lot of the times, So anyhow, gear not that big of a deal in my opinion. I mean, once you have a decent setup, that is. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So okay, while we're on the topic of gear, let's talk about goggles. What are your thoughts on the wide goggles? Because I swear every year it's like ever since EG2 started with the wide goggles, everyone's been making wide goggles, and progressively they're getting wider and wider and wider. What are your thoughts on the wide goggles?
Did you say wired, like Google goggles?
wider, like
wider.
Yeah.
Why don't they make Google goggles for while you're snowboarding?
And then they could just tell you, like, you're going on this run. You were this close to Merlin's. Wider? I don't know. What's the point of wider? Is that for like more panoramic view?
Yeah. I think it's more like I've gotten used to it in my EG2s anyway. Is that like I don't see rim except for one direction or like a certain direction. I'm just not used to seeing rim. So like in my goggles, I only see, where is it? On my nose is the rim, and like the other sides I can just barely see the side of the rims.
That could be good for like, I don't know if you ever noticed, but like skiers are like horses with blinders on, and they only look straight down the hill. And maybe having wider goggles would be good so they could see more people, so that they don't just suddenly go, right turn, and then take you out.
Yeah. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the whole wide goggles thing? Like, I don't think it's actually that big of a deal. I think it's more of like once you get used to it, once you've been in wider goggle, you start thinking, this is nice. It's nice to be able to see a little bit more. But I don't think it's like a big deal as far as performance-wise goes or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't see. The only thing I could see is maybe it's safer for just like exactly that reason. Like maybe people don't have to shoulder check as much, but they should.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting since we just ate a Fat Tony's pizza. What are your thoughts on diet for snowboarding as far as like trying to stay healthy and that sort of thing?
Pulled pork and beer.
Well, that is the diet of most whistlers.
Every day. I don't know.
Yeah.
I generally try to take it easy on giving nutritional advice to people. I usually prescribe exercise first with people until I don't see that they're losing weight, and then I start making dietary, interventions with people.
Yeah. Well, I think like as far as just like a general thing for snowboarding, like it doesn't even have to be not getting into weight loss or anything like that. Just making sure you eat enough in the morning for your energy wise. Like breakfast makes a huge deal for me anyway. When I wake up, I like to have like a really good breakfast. Have a big smoothie, maybe a couple of eggs if I'm cooking for myself, like some cereal. I think that's the biggest thing, just making sure you eat enough in the morning. A lot of people go out there and...
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. You go out there and you're hungry, and mountain food is expensive as well. If it's expensive to eat on a mountain, whereas if you eat at home, it's way cheaper. So, I don't know. That's my take on it anyway. Eat big breakfasts.
Yeah, I think
you don't have to eat as much.
Big breakfast, and then having like lots of good snacks on you. Like
having that energy that keeps going. Some people keep candy in their pockets, even just little sugar things to keep you going for each run, and
Yeah.
you just kind of snack throughout the day. And you never have that. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people do is they'll have a big breakfast, but they'll have big lunch and big après. But in between time, like the 4 hours in between, 3 to 4 hours in between breakfast and lunch, and between, lunch and après or dinner, your blood sugar is doing these big like up downs when you should be trying to kind of just keep it level.
Yeah.
Right there. So if you have a couple snacks with you throughout the day, you'll probably end up having a smaller portion of each meal, but you just stay at that same level of energy that you need to be at to operate.
Yeah, I mean, if you got snacks on you, you can usually ride through lunch as well. Then just go home and have a bite later.
Yeah, it's like self-injury prevention, because like most injuries happen right before lunch and right at the end of the day because people are down, they're tired.
Yeah. Okay, so next topic. This is interesting. When do you think lessons stop being as effective? Or do you think they ever stop being effective?
When you've maxed out what you can learn from that person, I think. And it doesn't necessarily mean that when you start riding better than your coach that you're done learning, and that they are not able to teach you anything. So I've learned from some people who I know I can do, bigger tricks than, but they have some pieces of information of, just free riding and things that I've never even thought of feeling on my edges of my board. Lessons are ongoing. It's always good to keep an open mind to somebody with more experience or with another understanding. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my take on it is that with lessons, here's the thing. I think when you start off, that's when the lessons are most effective. If you have to like rate as far as how effective lessons are for some snowboarders, like at the start when they're beginners, that's when they'll see the most impact from the lessons. Because I mean, when you're a beginner, that's when you don't know anything. You need someone telling you this is what you do, this is what you're doing wrong. That's when you're getting the basics down. So in my opinion, that's when you see the biggest thing as far as your return on your investment on lessons. Because like the thing I find like a lot of snowboarders have problems with is they don't take lessons when they're first starting out. Then they get all these bad habits that later when they take lessons they realize, oh, I'm doing this wrong, my hips are doing this wrong, my head's not pointing the right way, all this nonsense that they have to go back and fix it later. So what I always tell people that like they don't want to do lessons is that, look, this lesson's going to save you maybe a month of training later down the line, because you're not going to have the bad habits, you're not going to have those things that you have to go back and correct later. And as well as that, like, I mean, how many people enjoy falling down during that early period? Like that's when most people quit snowboarding.
Yeah.
They need to get over that hump, and like the faster you do it, the better getting over that initial hump of learning the snowboard.
I think the other thing too is like a good coach and a good trainer will spot like what you need to work on, and will find a way to improve you every time. And there's also always that benefit of having someone who's gonna always push you and always take you to terrain that's gonna help you develop your weaknesses and your strengths. And a lot of times when you start to try and just go off and learn on your own, you only work on your strengths. And that's what I see a lot of times is, like a kid will learn how to do front boards and never learn how to do back boards, and then just always default to that trick, or vice versa. Always learning to spin back threes, front threes.
The whole spinning thing, man, that's where everyone, I see so many people go into ruts. They only learn how to spin one way.
Yeah.
And like, did you ever meet Charlie Ida? I'm not sure how you say his last name.
No.
Yeah, he used to ride a lot in Whistler. He might have, actually, you might not have been here when he was around. It might have been a few years ago, but he was here every year for a little while. And yeah, he could only spin, I can't remember, what is it, frontside? But not that he could only spin frontside, but that he developed his frontside so far that it got this huge gap between his frontside tricks and every other spin. So like his frontside got to a point where he was doing like 1080 frontsides off like 50-foot jumps, but then like you take him to backside tricks and he was doing 180s. So but he's a good story actually. Like I gotta get him on the podcast or something one day. But have you ever heard of Charlie Ada? Like, yeah, so he was a Whistler local. We used to ride together all the time. He went through the pro ride camp as well here in Whistler.
Okay.
And yeah, so we used to ride park together a lot. And his goal was always to become a sponsored pro rider.
Yeah.
So he was always making sponsor me videos and all this other thing. And just one day he just happened that he put his yearly end of year Whistler riding video up. And it got picked up by one of the big Europe mags. I can't remember one of the big websites. I think it might have been White Lines. Mm-hmm. It just happened that someone from White Lines saw him. And I mean, this was a kid that was doing, at the time, he was doing frontside 10s in the Black Park. And this was a few years back. So frontside 10s, that was before the whole double cork madness kind of started. And that's pretty impressive to be doing frontside 10s and not have any sponsorships at all. So he just ended up on the front page of White Lines magazine. And then they called up, I think the video was titled something like, why does this guy have no sponsors or something like that? Because it was a sponsor me video. And literally one of the Yes crew from whoever was managing Yes in Europe or something like that saw the video. And then they called up the Yes office in Whistler or Vancouver or wherever it is. And they said, hey, this Charlie guy, have you seen this? Should we be sponsoring this guy? And because Charlie was riding in Whistler so much, he had run into the Yes crew here in Whistler. Because the Yes guys are around. It's, who are the Yes crew? Romaine, is it? Is Romaine?
I think so.
Romaine and they're Whistler guys. So he'd actually met them before on the gondola. So when they showed them the video, Charlie did, oh yeah, I know this guy. Yeah, I've seen him around. Yeah, go sponsor him. So I think that was just a crazy story. It just happened, like, so many coincidences happened that he just happened to get picked up, and then he happened to be on the front page of White Lines magazine. Someone happened to see his video. Like, I don't know, it was an interesting story anyway. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like, that's pretty crazy that someone can... I'm sure at this point he's probably forced himself to learn some backside tricks or something. I hope.
Oh, no, yeah. He did start working on, like, more. I think now he's a lot more well-rounded. But a lot of people get into that trap where they only spin one way, and like.
Well, I think there was a time you could get away with that because things like snowboarding wasn't well defined back in the 90s and all that time, so people would like learn to do. That was kind of what style was. Like, his style was frontside, his style was backside. Now styles become more what grab you put in and sort of, I don't know, style is such a gray area.
Yeah. It's so subjective as well. I mean, it's like you have someone like Torstein Hogmo who's got that smooth, like, just barely any movement, relaxed style. And then you got someone like Travis Rice who's got that really raw style to his movements. And yeah, I mean, totally different movements, but they're both stylish in their own way.
Or the Hegelsons, they're so twisty. Like, it looks like their heads looking backward. They're like doing some Linda Blair Exorcist kind of shit with their bodies. They're looking behind them. Yeah. Another thing that, like, a big bad habit that people do is they'll learn to spin up to 5, and they'll never get past 540 because they're always looking underneath their armpits.
Yeah.
And then they always get stuck doing, like, cork 5s.
Yeah.
Never can take it to 7 because they end up upside down.
Oh man, I did a whole video on that. Like, that's the thing. A lot of weird. As you get into the more advanced tricks, the mistakes you're making start getting more and more amplified because you're spinning more or you're going off a bigger jump or whatever. Yeah. And that's when you realize, like, oh, okay, I gotta go back to the basics and fix my basic tricks because that's where the mistake's happening, and it's just amplifying the way up as you get into the bigger tricks, which are just, as we were saying earlier, all the bigger tricks are just combinations of smaller tricks. So yeah. But anyway, I mean, back to the topic. When do lessons stop being effective? Well, I mean, they don't really ever stop being effective. You always benefit from lessons, but I mean, if you're talking as far as when maybe you're not getting as much progress from the lesson, I'd say probably, and this is me talking as someone who basically, like, spent my first 4 seasons or whatever just being coached all the time. I'd say probably once you have the basic tricks down and your basic riding down, that's when you probably see a decline in the progress you make, because at that point you've got all the basics down. You get to the point where you know what you should be doing, and it's more of that the person coaching you isn't so much teaching you anything new as telling you what you're doing wrong or picking up small mistakes, things like that. I think that's where I saw the point. That's when I stopped paying for really expensive coaching all the time, because I wasn't seeing the same return. Because at that point, if I wanted to do a 720, I knew how to do a 720. I didn't need someone telling me, okay, this is how you do the 720 anymore.
Yeah, at the I think at the higher levels too, it no longer becomes technical coaching as much as it becomes like people managing.
Yeah.
And instead of, sorry, there's a car going by.
Yeah.
Instead of teaching someone how to do a double cork, your coach is probably saying, okay, you're working on a double cork. I'm going to go down there, spot the jump, make sure it's safe, get some footage for you. They're managing things that are going to help you in other ways, more than just you getting that trick, because you know what you need to do to get that trick.
Yeah.
And then occasionally they'll see something and it's like, so you made a mistake in that trick, and they'll give you a little thing like, okay, you got to spin it faster, or just wait a couple seconds before you release that thing off the lip. And it's more the technical aspects get downplayed a bit more, and more of the logistics, organization, and the physical side of things, I think, get managed more by your coaches.
Yeah. So I mean, at this point, we'd be talking to the 0.1% of people, whatever it is, for that sort of level. I guess going back to our main question, when do lessons stop being effective, is for if you're someone who's not basically stomping, you've got all the basics down, then lessons are always effective for you at that point. Until you have all the basics down, lessons are just amazing, I think, as far as what you get from them. As long as you have a good instructor, though. Yeah. So it comes down to how good the instructor is, and that comes to you doing a little bit.
There's a lot of bad ones out there too.
Yeah. Do your research and ask around, find a good recommendation for a good instructor, and I mean, lessons are always good. They're even as someone who runs a business that revolves around people who don't want to take lessons, so they want to get advice online, I still say, come to me if you want some feedback, but lessons are still great. Lessons are always good for you. All right, so that's where we ended the podcast. We just had some little audio issues towards the end, so I just cut the end of the podcast off, and I'm just recording this little ending here now. So thanks so much for tuning in for this week's podcast, and I hope you guys enjoyed the new intro. I recorded a whole proper pro intro for you guys this week, so we're slowly making improvements to the podcast, fixing issues with audio and things as we go along the way. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode of the Snomie podcast. Take care.